Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining so promptly. I will give it until 2 minutes past, though, just to let everybody else join the call. So there is no technical failure. There is no sound at the moment. We're just waiting for folks to join. Hey, that's 2 minutes past. So let me get the webinar going today. Hello, my name is Stuart Beeston. I am the Secretary of Energy Traders Europe's Operations Committee, and I'd like to welcome you all to the latest in a series of webinars that we have been running throughout 2026. The next one, if you want to come and see us, will be at Energy Traders World in London in September. So we're having a short break for the summer. Another point I'd say is that we're always looking for new speakers and new ideas for these webinars. So if you would like to either present or you'd like to hear from somebody, then please get in touch with us. So a few housekeeping things before we get the meat of the meeting started. The first is that a video of the session today will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, so you can take a look at that or pass that on to friends and colleagues. Please keep an eye on our LinkedIn channel for future events. Just some admin within the meeting today. Please, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, not into the chat. Secondly, the presenters will be using Slido, so please stand by with your mobile phones to capture the QR code to participate in that, and please do participate in the Slido today. So what's this all about? Well, over the past 6 months, we've been asking for ideas about what you'd all like to hear with regard to AI, and two big themes have come out of that. First is how to move on from experimentation into scale and using the tool in anger, and the second is around governance. And the presentation today will cover several things, but it will certainly cover those. So thank you for the presenters for that. Now, who have we got with us today? The first person, please wave, is Jan Chentor. Jan is a partner at PwC, leading the commodity trading practice. And for the purposes of this webinar, he leads PwC's Trust in AI proposition strategy. The second presenter, you can see there in the middle, is Will, and Will's expertise is in helping organizations manage risk, achieve measurable business benefits from AI. So really on that governance topic, amongst other things as well, obviously. And lastly, but not least, is Trish. Trish has been all over AI for quite some while, so I won't drain her CV, but amongst the many things she's worked on are governance frameworks and assessing AI return on investment. So plenty of questions I would have thought for the guys today. So that's the intro. I'm now going to hand over to Jan to lead us through today's presentation.
Thank you very much, Stuart, and thank you all for joining today's webinar. And so can you go down one slide, please, Will? So let's look at the agenda. So really the agenda, what we're trying to accomplish here today is, we'll try to give you some theory behind what we think Trust in AI agenda covers, and then we'll try to pivot on that and say, all right, these are some of the practical ways of how we handle it and how we do it with some of our clients. So you'll see two kind of prongs of this area. And any questions, as Stuart said, please do pop it in the question mark or reach out to us if you have other questions, and we'll be happy to connect with you. Next slide, please. So let's set the scene a little bit. So, and I think these numbers will kind of pen down some of our conversations going forward. So if you look at it, 92% of CEOs plan to invest more in AI. This is a number that we derived out from one of our CEO surveys, and it's probably not a surprise to you guys, because you're probably seeing that in your own organization, where you're probably seeing all the budgets, you're seeing all the buzz around AI. How do we get AI? What do we need to do with it? So the ambition is absolutely there. But here's the gap: less than only 1% of this initiatives are actually truly AI mature. So nearly everyone is investing, but almost no one feels like they've cracked it. So there's a bit of a gap going on there. So, and the third number is that we should really probably focus on is there's 7.2 times higher financial performance amongst the most AI fit companies. And this is concentrated on the top 20% are capturing 74% of the returns. So this isn't a gentle curve. This is a winner takes all type of curving, so that you're basically, if you're doing things right, the rewards on this is exponential. And the question we keep hearing from our clients, especially from our energy clients, are twofold. And energy trading clients are twofold: is how do we get the 92% who are spending, the group that's actually seeing the results? What are they? And so what we see in this view is, to truly bridge this gap, you need to look at this as from a trust agenda. You need to be able to trust. In our opinion, trust equals results. Trust shouldn't be a compliance exercise. The trust should probably underpin what you're trying to do, so it gives innovation and a way to actually explore itself. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this is a slide that another matrix that I wanted to pick from our CEO survey is. What you're looking at is that we've kind of looked at it from a matrix perspective. You're looking at cost at the x-axis and revenue at the y. And if you're looking at only 12% of CEOs are actually sitting at the 12%, saying that we're actually decreasing costs and increasing revenue. This is a small number. I'm trying to, this is not a doomsday number, but if you're looking at this, there is quite a bit of space, and you're not alone. If you're not in the space where you're trying to accelerate your AI and you're not really understanding where things are, this is where everybody is at the moment. So, but hopefully by some of the things that we're going to be talking about, we're going to get you to the next. How do you put a plan together so that you can accelerate and really realize how AI can make an impact on your P&L? Can we go to slide 5, please? So let's bring some of this to the energy sector and some of this to the energy trading sector. So in my opinion, this is, our sector has a lot of, has its own dynamics, really. So it's a interesting area to be in. I think it has a lot of potential as well. So if you look at some of the numbers from our CEO survey, that 25% of energy firms saw higher revenue from AI last year versus only 30% globally. And 22% achieved reduced cost versus 26% globally. So our industry is slightly behind from a cross-sector perspective. But here's the interesting part: only 37% of energy CEOs worry about keeping pace with technology, compared to 42% globally. So there is less anxiety, but there's also less urgency. And that combination is giving us, I believe, is a bit of a headroom into the opportunity. And I think this is more of I don't like to look at this more of a risk, so that, oh no, energy and energy trading clients are going to be staying behind. I think there is a very good opportunity where so for you to kind of pin on to this and move forward and be safe at the same time. When AI works in this context, so that when you make it safe and when you make it explainable, when you start understanding what it's starting to do, so some of the efficiencies are incredible, especially in some of the businesses that we're in. Trading, it could be around forecasting, it could be around operational, or it could be around risk management, and also in shipping. The efficiency and resilience gains could be enormous, and we can get there. You cannot get there with isolated pilots. You kind of need to put together some foundations and almost a roadmap of how you're going to get there. So, and there's a bit of a call to action in this slide, where what we like to say is, build and reinforce your AI foundations and scale what already works and make it repeatable and make it trusted, so that people understand how to make that work. And then, so the numbers are actually making it a bit more sense to people when they're looking at it, because a lot of the times we get our clients coming back to, well, how do I trust this? We will try to show you in our future slides how do we make that happen for you. So should we go to the Slido, please? So before we go any further, I wanted to hear from you guys and share some, and we've shared some of the information about where we see some of the CEOs and other companies what their heads are. So it would be great to hear from you guys. So you should be seeing a Slido, either a code or a QR code on the screen. So if you don't mind opening that up and giving us your perspective on what's stopping your organization from scaling the usage of AI. Is it governance risk? Is it talent? Is it data readiness? Or you're not sure? So it will be interesting to hear your perspectives. I'll pause for a little bit and I'll wait for you guys to kind of populate this, and then we'll get back. Oh, that's quite interesting. I love the data readiness is now becoming like a big center concentrated area. So I think it will be interesting to have a touch point on how do we push this into data readiness perspective. And I think we could come on, in this area, we will touch on some of the on a piece of the governance where the data readiness will become an area. But I think this is a great area, because it's really lack of focus, lack of knowledge. It's really resonating with me. I don't know what 1, 2, 24 months mean, but it's that it will be interesting to understand that. Right. So we can leave maybe like another second, and then we can move on to the sections. I think we're one last participant is typing, so I'll wait for that. Right. So we have trust, governance, and data readiness as the big ones, and then everything else is kind of trickling in. Right. So I think that brings us to the core of today's sessions. We've established with what I tried to establish is there is a lot of ambition. There's a lot of buzz around AI, but I think as you guys are already in the same boat, that there's a lot of confusion about how do we make this work, what's the right governance on it, how do we need to govern it, what kind of data do I need to have? So I think our next sections will try to unpack some of these, and we'll hopefully give you a little bit of a practical information about how do we look at PwC, how do we look at it from getting our clients into a more resilient and organized AI practitioners. So with that, I will switch over to Will, and we'll take it on.
Super. Thank you very much, John. So I suppose, let me start with the question that's on the slide. Why is trust in AI so important? So as the headlines rotate, I'm not going to go through them one by one. There isn't a single point to these incidents. The point is more the pattern. Most AI failures that we see don't start with bad intent. They usually start with sensible ambition to move faster, to reduce manual effort, to improve decision making, to automate a process or a better kind of customer experience. But somewhere between experimentation and live deployment, the control environment does not always keep pace. Ownership is unclear. The data is not fully understood. The model output is difficult to explain. The human in the loop is not really empowered to challenge it. Or there's no kind of real process in place for what happens when AI gets something wrong. And that's why trust matters. For energy trading specifically, this becomes even more important. AI is not just being used to summarize documents anyhow or draft content or emails. It's used for forecasting. It's used for optimization, market monitoring, surveillance, risk, nominations, decision support. And the impact is not just limited to the trading desk. Product control needs confidence that AI outputs can be challenged, reconciled, explained. Risk needs confidence that exposures, scenarios are being interpreted correctly, and the back office needs the confidence that nominations, settlements, and exceptions are handled with the right proportionate controls. And these are super high, consequence workflows. Speed matters, but confidence matters just as much. So when we talk about trust in AI, we're not just talking about a soft concept or a compliance wrapper. Leading back to John's point earlier, we are talking about when the business, the trading desk, risk compliance, etc., the board have enough confidence to let AI move from pilots into the workflows and into the work that really matters. So the challenge now not whether organizations can experiment with AI. They clearly can. We know they can. I'm sure you all are. The challenge is whether they can trust it enough to scale. So what's changed then? What's changed is largely the nature of the technology. If we take a step back and look a couple of years ago, most people experienced and experimented with AI and in a quite contained interaction. You typed a question in and the model produced a response. It was useful, but relatively limited. Now, AI can be connected to data, to tools, APIs, market feeds, documents, workflow systems, and potentially trading or surveillance platforms. And that changes the risk profile significantly. The model's no longer just producing content, it starts to support the actual action. And that's the shift that this slide is showing. Foundation models gave us the answer. AI agents can help take steps, but agentic systems can coordinate multiple steps across a much wider process. And so for an energy trading audience, this is particularly important. So this sector already operates in a highly connected system. Prices, nominations, and connectors out wages, weather, everything, regulatory reporting, they all interact with each other. And in the context, an AI agent can look a bit like a very fast junior trader or an analyst. It can process huge amounts of information. It doesn't get tired and it can spot patterns very quickly. But at the same time, it may also be slightly overconfident. It may not fully understand context. It may not have the experience. And it may not know when the right answer is to stop and to escalate. So the question then becomes, if we are going to introduce more of this autonomous AI into our environments, what controls, what human oversight, and what evidence do we need around it? So this slide shows the choices organizations face, the reactive path, which often feels faster at the beginning. A team builds a proof of concept, has an idea, the demo looks great, business sees the potential, and everyone wants to move quickly. They're all on board. Then the questions start coming. What data was used? Has it been approved? Can we explain the output? Who owns the risk? Who signed it off? What happens if the model drifts? All these different considerations. And that's when we see speed turn into rework. Trust by design is significantly different. It means building the right confidence, controls, and evidence into the lifecycle from the very start, not as a blocker to progress, but as an enabler to progress. And it has to be, as John said earlier, proportionate. A low risk productivity tool should not go through the same level of rigor and review as an AI system that is ultimately supporting trading decisions, market surveillance, or reg reporting. higher impact use cases, they completely do still need those strong controls, the accountability, and the testing behind it. And so I think the key message is governance shouldn't be the thing that slows AI down, but done well, it's what allows the organisation to say yes much faster. As people understand the risks, they have the confidence, and they're being managed. So why does this matter now? And I think some of these points were brought up on the word cloud earlier, so it's fantastic to hear that there's some consistency with what you're experiencing, with what we're seeing out in the market as well. So what I would tend to point to is to four things as to why this is specifically important for energy trading now, why trust is so important. I think first is the market context is becoming significantly more complex. There's more volatility, there's more renewables, there's more cross-border dependencies, there's more data. And that creates a natural pull towards AI because the human challenge is becoming much harder. Secondly, AI capability is changing very, very quickly. The move from, as we were saying, a model that advises an agent that can then act is a material shift. The control environment that we've worked in for a dashboard or a basic model, it won't be enough for an agentic workflow, so we need to change. Third, and these were kind of called out on the word cloud as well, regulatory expectations are changing, and they're changing very quickly. Remit 2 has introduced new obligations around algorithmic trading. At the same time, EU Act is now largely give a few dates, it enforce and applies a risk-based approach to AI with much stricter requirements than what we've seen before for higher risk systems. So for many organisations, the practical challenge isn't just one regulation in isolation, it's also the overlap between AI governance, market surveillance, abuse, cyber, op-res, and managing your own internal risk appetite too. Finally, the fourth there, and this is a really key one, is reputation. When AI goes wrong, the headline is very rarely, well, the model was technically imperfect. The headline is usually about whether the organisation understood it, controlled it, explained it, and owned it ultimately. And that's why we see trust being a competitive advantage. These organisations can evidence trust, will be the ones that are able to scale it through more valuable use cases. So if trust does allow AI to scale, the next question is what needs to be in place to create that trust? And we've got just two examples here of some of the key foundations that enable that trust. First, on the left-hand side is risk tiering. So not, as I say, not every use case should be treated in the same way. Low productivity tool should have a much lighter touch route through governance, but things that might impact safety, supply, customers, regulated outcomes, operational decisions need much deeper, much more thorough review, stronger controls, and more frequent monitoring. The second foundation is a clear governance framework, and that means connecting your organization's AI strategy through to risk appetite, policies, procedures, accountability, training, tooling, reporting, the ability to be audited if required. And all of this can't be static either. You know, as AI use cases change, technology changes, regulation changes, the data changes, the risk profile can also change. So governance needs to also keep pace throughout the life cycle. So I think the key takeaway here is that responsible AI is not about creating that blocker, it's about creating a proportionate structure that allows the business to adopt AI safely, confidently, and at pace. This is just the mechanism that I would leave you with before I pass over to my colleague Trish, who's going to talk through a couple of specific examples and demos. Trust enables adoption. Adoption then enables scale, and scale enables the better business outcomes. People don't just use AI because they know it exists. They use it because they understand what it's for, when they know its limits, and what to do if something looks wrong. For a trader, that might mean being clear whether AI is providing a signal, a recommendation, an executable action. For product control, risk compliance and back office, it might mean being able to see the inventory, the controls, the exceptions, and the approvals and any evidence. And for leadership, it's maybe knowing what use cases are actually live. What are we doing with AI? What's material? Who owns it? Who's responsible? And is this all operating within the risk appetite? And that's what we're seeing mature organizations doing differently. They don't treat trust as a kind of final sign-off gate at the end of delivery. They treat it as part of the operating system for adopting AI. So I suppose the overall message is not slow down, but very much the opposite. It's if energy trading organizations want to move faster with AI, they need that trust architecture that allows them to move forward with confidence. So we've spoken a bit about the theory behind this. I'll now pass over to my colleague Trish, who'll bring this to life by talking through what responsible AI looks like in practice, provide some demos and solutions, and talk through how organizations can start putting these foundations into action. Trish, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, thank you, Will. As part of the section that I'll be covering off will be two things. So I think firstly is really to bring to life a story with a client who we've worked with on responsible AI. And then secondly, show you practical demos of how you could move away from responsible AI frameworks into something that's operational through a set of technology tools. So I guess to start with is the kind of client case study. So we've worked with a utility clients with a trading business. They had, policy, high level responsible AI framework, but they had very limited key operational AI governance process in place. For them, the key thing was not, should we experiment with AI? They've already identified a large portfolio of AI use cases and opportunities across their subsidiaries. The key challenge was moving from AI experimentation to AI scaling. So how do they then do that in a safe way? So in terms of three things that we did, so that's firstly, we've worked with them to review the framework to ensure that it's fit for purpose. It's managing all the new and exacerbated risks that AI brings. So examples include, did it cover use of AI open source models? Did it address any potential for prompt injection? But we've also aligned it against best practice standards and also regulatory requirements. So the likes of ISO 42001 or the NIST AI risk management framework, for instance. I think the second part that we've helped them with was setting up the cross-functional AI governance forum. So with AI, it's not just a technology exercise. So I think bringing together teams across legal, compliance, data, cybersecurity, product development, I think is important. Every persona sees a different part of the risk. So product teams will then understand the customer operational use case. Data teams will understand, what information's being used, how data is flowing through the algorithm, and then cyber teams will understand threats around data leakage, unauthorized access. And you've got your compliance, regulatory teams, for instance, who are very much kind of interested in ownership, accountability, rather than it sitting within just one team. So I think a cross-functional AI governance forum was quite key for them. And that's also something that we are seeing mature organizations adopt within the industry. The third thing that we did with them was really applying and testing out a particular use case that they had in flight against the framework. So they've been trying to deploy a customer-facing Gen AI chatbot for about 18 months. Initial plan was around 6 months. Because they didn't really have the foundational process initially, they lacked the confidence to deploy it responsibly. So in particular, the chatbot can generate free text responses for them that carried a higher risk profile compared to scripted, rules-based FAQ bots. So, we've worked with the team to test practical failure modes. So could it reveal personal data? Could it reveal, potentially inaccurate kind of guidance? Could it respond poorly to a vulnerable customer, for instance? I think those tests were quite important prior to productionizing it, because it's really identified the risk points, but also helped identify what guardrails, human escalation, monitoring that would need to be in place and also strengthened as part of the governance process. So in terms of the key outcomes of that particular engagement that we've worked on with the clients, I think shifting left and incorporating AI trust as part of the design is really key to accelerating value rather than waiting last minute to do all these checks and balances. With that said, the client that we've worked with, it's really increased their confidence in deploying AI at scale. They've now set up and reviewing and approving a number of different use cases on a bi-weekly basis within that cross-functional team. They've also been able to confidently deploy that chatbot, and it's now realizing value. So responses to customer queries, for instance, have been incredibly accurate, with the agents resolving high number of queries without the need for kind of escalation. So that's really boosted efficiency and customer satisfaction, which was really quite important for them. I mean, that's only one particular case study. And that particular challenge is not really just unique to one client. So across the market, firms are scaling AI from pilots to use case portfolios. Vendors are embedding AI into products. Teams are building it locally within their machine. AI is just showing up, everywhere, in places where leadership didn't really plan for it. I think the problem is quite simple. I think, most firms won't really be able to govern AI if they can't see it. And if you can't govern it, obviously you can't really scale it with confidence. So what we, have been doing in PwC is we are working with clients and helping them build AI governance platform within their environment. So maybe if I can kind of quickly show you what that then looks like in practice, just to bring it to life. If I can take over, Will. So this is just a snapshot of a platform that we are developing with clients. I think the first step, it starts with discovery. So what this does is it scans across code bases and systems to identify where AI is actually being used. So instead of relying on self-declaration forms, for instance, which might not always be accurate, you get kind of an evidence-based view of your AI estate. So that then becomes a single sort of source of truth, which is live, searchable, and always current. So what you'll see on the screen here is an example of that, which is a number of different use cases within the inventory, which then kind of gives you kind of key stats and cost over time as well. So what I've done before this call is I've pre-populated a particular use case just to bring this to life. So, previously, teams are spending weeks and weeks like pulling documents together, kind of chasing owners, filling in forms, and you still kind of end up with gaps. So with having, an AI governance platform really changes that. It reads what's already there, the code base, the configurations, tickets, and documentation, and it then auto-populates the governance record. So what usually takes teams weeks and weeks, that now can happen in seconds. It's very much evidence-led, and it's also using AI to make sure that there's consistency and speed in doing that. So this just gives a bit of that particular overview. And what the tool also does is it then triages risks. So as Will mentioned earlier, not every single use case would need the same level of depth and of oversight. So it needs to be quite proportionate. So in this particular use case, we're really assessing it against practical drivers, so customer impact, decision influence, data sensitivity, regulatory exposure, for instance. So this particular use case had, come out as high risk. I think the next step which is quite important, is really translating that into key drivers. So in this particular use case, we're hitting a lot of the risks around inaccuracy bias. What then this allows you to do is systematically identify what that is, and also provide kind of controls as well against each particular risk. And that you can then integrate that as part of the design of the build that you're doing. So this just gives you a bit of an overview. Based on the risks and kind of the residual risks post the controls kind of being implemented, this then gives you a mechanism by which to route it to particular approvers. Obviously, if a use case is lower risk, for instance, it could mean that organization does sort of self-attestation. For instance, if it's higher risk, that will then require review across different teams. But this is just an example of how we are helping clients almost automate this particular process, given the number of different use cases and development that they are doing within their organization.
And Trish, if I may kind of dovetail on the back of your description. So we're also creating this is a newer project of ours, and we're building a trade allocation type AI kind of a agentic AI solution, where our customer didn't want to build a manual trade allocation. So what we're doing is we're kind of using agents to kind of build it up and then distribute the trades into different books. And we've actually, the way that we've approached that was they first did a bit of a AI governance in the first part, just identifying these issues and these areas. The key topic areas for them was around cost, because cost is a big thing. You could really move forward with building these agents, and all of a sudden you understand that it's more expensive than what you think it is. So thinking about that upfront and having a framework around how do you apply, that was important. It was important for us to not hallucinate, and it was also important for us to understand how does it react to different use cases where it doesn't understand something, how does it come back to so essentially the human in the loop. So our strategies are always around a human needs to be a part of this implementation of AI, because AI is a tool at the end of the day. It's not something to replace humans, it's to enhance our workflows. So in doing so, we've actually incorporated all these design patterns that Trish and Will have been talking about into this agent. And the beauty of this now is you can actually use AI to also start checking on AI. So you can feed it all of your rule sets. You can feed, and you can actually get the responsibility scores automatically from the AI that is as it's rolling through. So this is really and we're actually accelerating the development of these tool sets by utilizing these frameworks, so that we know that the answers to essentially what I call them the naysayers, as the AI is always going to hallucinate, is actually diminished. Another thing that we've also identified was there were some processes where we could not trust the LLM, and instead of using an LLM to give an answer, what we did was we asked the LLM to actually write code. So it became a deterministic process, where then it became 1 = 1. It's never going to fail that. So we are actually asking it to use a different tool to actually give us the answer that we're going after. And the only way we could have actually identified that was by tracing that and understanding what does the pattern look like, and how does the LLM answer, and then also getting the risk appetite from our client to say this is the number of the response has to be 100%. That's how we identified it, and that's how we used it. So I wanted to kind of layer that out as well, and that's into this topic, so that it kind of hopefully brings it a little bit more to life.
Thank you, John. I think that is a really kind of useful context thing, sharing, the use cases that you've developed with your clients. So I think Will mentioned it earlier, but, we are now moving away from kind of generative AI into AI agents into multi-agent systems. I think, the risk profile increases with that particular shift, but also obviously the value increases. So I think the next demo we kind of wanted to showcase is observability demo, which we had been working with our clients on. Adoption of agentic AI becomes even more important in terms of post-deployment governance. So it's quite key. I think the key message is, one-off approval is not enough. So once these agents are live, organizations are, would need confidence that it continues to behave safely, compliantly, and obviously within its intended boundaries. So I think there are probably 5 key points as part of this demo, and I'm not going to go through what the demo is doing on this webinar, but firstly, observability, that really does provide your live AI control room. So that gives teams visibility of, the deployed AI systems, including control failures, risk events, breach trends, issues as well that would require kind of immediate action. I think secondly, observability also helps detect customer operational and reg risks quite early on, which is especially quite important for agentic AI. With agentic AI, you'll now have additional actions around tool calling, within external websites, databases, accessing kind of different data, triggering workflows maybe you had not planned for kind of initially. So I think observability and being able to detect that and putting in guardrails is quite key. I think the next one is evidence and traceability. So you'll see on the platform that it kind of shows the prompt response model traces from the agents as well, which then allows the team to sort of reconstruct what's happened, understand it, the root causes, the evidence decisions, I think, which is quite key from an auditability perspective. But yeah, I think lastly, more importantly, really turning observability and visibility into action. So taking issues, triaging it, escalating it, and turning issues into kind of remediation. So I think the final point for me is, with the agentic AI and observability, it really does, turn governance into something that is a lot more operational post-deployment. I think the demo that I showed earlier then focuses on kind of pre-deployment, but with agentic AI, I think live monitoring is quite key.
Right. So I think we've gone through some of the explanation about, we gave you the bit of a more theoretics around how do we see this how do we make it work? Then we got into the next level of trying to show you guys some examples of how do we do it. So do you think your organization has robust governance in place to support AI? I love it that it's already coming in. And I think it will be interesting to understand how, by listening to this, what are some of your thoughts? So one or two things that you can think about from this. Oh, we have a yes. Models used in cost. Okay.
That's a really good point. Can it be robust, or is it a moving target?
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely a moving target. I think any organisation would be very difficult for them to say they got it fully covered. They don't need to do anything else with it.
I like the not sure it's keeping up pace with the tech. That's a good one. And where we are every 6 months, something happens. So I think it's a fair assessment. However, I think if you think through it, having the framework around, I know it's sometimes a bit of a not so exciting topic to talk about frameworks and governance, but what I always tell my clients is, think through it give yourself a roadmap, and then you're ready for anything that comes up. And if it's something that's completely out of the new, you're not actually completely blinded. You have a way of solving that problem. Right. I think we have everything coming through, but I love that yes is the big. So it's amazing that there's quite a bit of people having that the governance in place to support AI, that's very good to hear. But for the rest of us that are working through this, it'll be interesting to talk through that. Should we move to the next section? Right. So I think we're closing this down. I really wanted to give you a couple of takeaways from our conversations. First of all, doing all this work is around, you need to start with your business outcomes. It's not about AI is not for the sake of technology. AI is not a technology solution where you just apply it to everything. You need to think about what your business is and what are you applying it for and what are you trying to get out of it. Second thing is around the governance. I don't want you guys to think that governance for the sake of governance and it essentially slows down innovation. Governance in our belief is it accelerates innovation. It gives a framework. It gives a guidance, almost like a roadmap of what you can and what you cannot do. Therefore, it's easier to innovate in those parameters. And treating trust as a competitive advantage is also part of that. If a lot of times we look at some of these governance elements as saying, okay, well, I'm just going to do the bare minimum. I'm going to put this in there so it's a compliance tick. But in my opinion, that's the wrong way of looking at it. You need to look at this as a competitive advantage because your customers will look at it that way. Your counterparties will look at it that way. And I think with the pace that we're going, with the breakneck speed, within a year or two, we might be seeing agent-to-agent conversations going on. And in that aspect, you need to understand what agents are doing, how your AI is responding to their AI, so that you're not opening yourself up into a larger threat pool. And I think it's going to be a bit of a business as usual task, so that we need to think about it in a different way. Right. So I think in the next 12 minutes or so, if there are any questions, comments, or any opinions, I would love to hear that from you. Stuart, how do we do this? You're the master of this one.
So what I'll do is I've just in case I put a series of questions in the Q&A, but I'm hoping what will happen now is that folk will now go into the Q&A and ask some questions. But please, if you're on the call, please go and ask your questions. But to avoid having dead air, let me just lead off with the question. So I thought the presentation was really rich. So thank you. But it reminded me of being in sessions where we were considering a control framework for any energy trading organization. And let me give you a couple of anecdotes and let's see how you react to this.
Mm-hmm.
So when I've asked folk typically from a back office or a sort of finance background about their attitude towards adoption of AI. One of the things they'll say is that it's appropriate for pre-flow activity, so decision support, all the stuff. But once something has happened, then it's not for us. It's a deterministic thing. Now, The pushback I've given to that is, well, would you get into a driverless car if you're in Shenzhen or in San Francisco? And they'll say, oh yeah, well, we would. And we think, well, that's mad. So you're more worried about an accountant than an undertaker, are you? Now, but I think what's going on there is some assumptions about what's happened with risk mitigation. How do you get to a proper and rich discussion around trust and risk, and how do you get the right people in the room? Because the other side of that is that an error in pre-trade will lose you a lot of money. An error post-trade, well, you can figure that out. I mean, you might fail an audit, but that can be resolved. Whereas and typically control discussions tend to have the likes of compliance and risk and lawyers and so on and so on. And the last person that everyone wants to turn it into a controls discussion is a trader, because they're busy making money. So how do you get the right people in the room to having the right discussion? So please reflect on that.
Right. Will, do you want to start that off with some of the discussions that you're having with your client, and then we can pepper in.
Yeah, sorry, John. I was going through some of the other questions and preparing some responses. Do you want to pick up and then?
Yeah. So I guess how do you get the right people into the right framework? I mean, it all starts with the business problem, right? So you framed it really well. You know, we're looking at. I mean, energy trading. AI is not a new concept in energy trading. I mean, we've been doing it for, algo trading. I mean, yes, it's more ML, but it is a derivative of this, and we've been testing and back testing all these functions, and it's been code based, and it's been running, and it's been actually executing quite a bit of trade on the background. I think it's breaking down the myths is the key thing, educating people, bringing up some of the ideas around. So I joined a CRO forum a couple of months ago, and that was exactly, I will never touch this because I can't get a complete answer. Well, actually, yes, you can, because if depending on what the question you're asking it, if you're trying to come up with a deterministic answer, then give it tell it you need a deterministic, and then you apply a different logic to it. So say, I don't want you to make a guess. I want you to write a code that will produce this answer for me, and then give me that answer. And then you're tracing that, you're checking on that to making sure that the answers that are coming back are actually correct. How do you get everybody on the same pages? I think we need to simplify some of these discussions and showcasing, this is how we're going to do it. This is your framework based on how we're going to move it forward, so that it's not governance overkill. It's about putting the side, a good mentor of mine said, we set the boundaries of the road, the side bars, and then we let people run with it, and then we'll catch things and we'll find things. And if that kind of mindset starts resonating within the organization, it becomes easy to then pick up. And once people start seeing these things are working, then they start trusting it. Almost like we used to, we've all been through ETRM implementations, we've all been through other technical implementations. And in the beginning, we didn't trust the systems. And then after using them for a couple of years, all of a sudden, we don't want to change them because this is the right answer from going forward. I think it's going to be the same pattern.
Yeah, if I can kind of also sort of add to that. So I work with clients kind of cross sector, and I think it's a very similar pattern in terms of what they're asking for. Like, how do we even start this initiative? How do we then get going? I think questions around that is probably the first step, and then the second step is kind of identifying kind of ownership. So a lot of organizations we work with, when they're pretty immature within their maturity around AI, they almost set up an AI strategy, innovation and governance kind of working group. Within that, they try and identify, okay, what's our strategy in terms of AI use cases? Which ones should we be investing in? Which one would return kind of high ROI, coming up with a bit of a roadmap, but also use that as a mechanism by which you get together the right people in the room, whether that's legal, whether that's the product teams, to try and establish what does good look like for us when it comes to responsible AI scaling. What are those particular principles? But also going beyond that, and for the stakeholders across the organization, if they've already adopted AI or using AI, sharing stories around what's worked well, what's not worked well, how much better is say ChatGPT Enterprise compared to your Claude work, for instance. I think having that conversation and initiative across the organization and bringing everyone together, whether that's through an AI Champs Network, whether that's the working group that I've mentioned, I think is really quite key.
Do you mind if I just pick out, and just because we've got 4 minutes left, can I pick out a couple of questions and just answer them directly, if that's okay? Yeah. So just going to pick up on one from, I think came in from Stuart Ridgway, asking about ACR, ESMA and the EU Act, and whether it's sensible to wait for them, given that timelines have changed and things. I think, yeah, if we look at something like the EU Act specifically, organisations have been navigating this for quite a significant period of time, and there have obviously been delays to some of the higher risk elements, but there are requirements that should be in place today for a number of organisations that are operating within the European Union. I think what we're seeing a lot of clients doing, though, is using the EU Act as the kind of baseline for future regulatory developments that are going to happen across the globe. So if you look at somewhere like, for example, South Korea, or some of the regulation that's happening in individual states in the US, they're all kind of following suit to some of the principles, guidelines and standards that have been set out by the European Commission in the EU Act. So to answer directly, Stuart, I think there is a lot that you can be doing now. I think there's a bit of a gap that we've got for the high risk elements for the EU Act, but a significant amount of activity still needs to take place. And then I think just the question that I think you'd added in, Stuart, around attitudes to adoption between different geographies, and is it different? I think the short answer is yes, absolutely. It's certainly, if you compare, for example, Europe and Asia Pacific, we're seeing a much higher adoption of AI in Asia Pacific and key areas compared to Europe, and it's really reflecting a focus on growth versus efficiency. It's looking at organisations that have very quickly established themselves and are able to turn their strategy on the edge of a coin. And make those decisions because they don't have all the legacy systems, the bureaucratic elements that we might have in long established organizations. So they're able to focus more on how do we think forward for the future rather than how do we fix what we've already got, how do we make things more efficient, which is what we're seeing in Europe.
Brilliant, thank you. Before I close off, there is one question from so Navarro. First of all, yes, the slides will be shared. Kutsarov's question around data leakage of trading data. If you're able to answer that briefly, that would be appreciated. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Yes. Trish, do you want to take it or do you want me to take it?
Sorry, I was muted. I was just going to say that we're working, a lot with our clients around this particular sort of topic area. So where, just to share a bit of an overview, we're doing a retrospective review of a lot of the third-party AI solutions that are being adopted, and checking the kind of contractual clauses, for instance, just to make sure that it's got the right provisions in place around protecting data. Because some of newer entrants in the market around AI are saying that they would like to use customer data to almost improve their products and services. But I think it's obviously quite important to have that due diligence up front before you decide to invest in a particular AI-enabled product and negotiate those particular terms with the vendor. So I think we're seeing a lot of that kind of in the market.
Yeah, and also just to add into that, I think your data security, this is almost like how you would treat another data-rich solution, right? So you do need to layer in your security framework, understand, you need to extend that into how the agent is going to use that data, and where is it going to take that data. What we touched upon some of these observability, because one of the angles to that could be, what is the LLM using? Where is it getting the data, and where is it sending the data, and what type of interactions is it having with externals? So tightly monitoring, especially very sensitive data interactions, would be a very good idea. There's also, in certain cases, taking a more closed environment to LLMs would be a good idea. For example, in PwC, we have access to every model, but the way that we do it is we close it down so that nothing from our environment can leak out and gets to be used for the training purposes. Yes, you might say, well, then, but you're not having you're not having the latest and greatest, but that's a decision, a design, an architectural decision that you might want to make. How much of this do you need the latest and greatest versus do I need to, am I going to get everything right with what I already have? So thinking through those areas and start layering. There's no one single bullet. It's going to be probably a layered approach of, looking at your contracts, looking at where the data resilience sits in, looking at your data access security, and then also your vendors and what are they using. So, and then the major key is, how do you then tie it up with saying, okay, I need to monitor this so that I know exactly what's happening and I can respond to it when a potential leak does happen. How do I take that mitigation actions? Stilian, hopefully that answered your question. Right.
Stilian, if you can hear us, and apologies for using your family name earlier, please just get in touch with us. And if that hasn't answered it, we'll make sure you get a follow-up on that question. So I'm conscious we're now just past the hour, so people will start to drift off. So the first thing I must do is to say thank you to the 3 speakers today. That was superb. That was, as you could tell from the number of questions I had, I think there's a lot of food for thought in there. So thank you very, very much indeed. I take it that you would be delighted to be contacted by anybody that's on the call today to take any follow-up on this.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So please, for anyone on the call, please get in touch with the folks who've presented today. That will be much appreciated. Just to reiterate, the discussion today will be available on our YouTube channel, and the slideware from today, including the contact details from all the team at PwC, will be made available too. I hope to see some of you in NG Traders Week in London in September. But a last and final appeal: if there's anything that you've heard today that has prompted some ideas about what you might want to talk about next. So, for instance, Will, your observation that where's the action at in terms of innovation? It's probably not Europe. If you'd like to hear some more about that question, then I think that, for instance, that might be an interesting discussion. But anything you'd like us to be pulling onto a webinar on this topic, please get in touch with NG Traders Europe. So last and final, thank you to the guys, and everybody have a good week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers.